Well, hello and welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. I'm Tim, as always, joined with my partner Brett here from Skillwork. And on this podcast, we gather to talk about issues, trends, emerging topics surrounding skilled trades and specifically around the manufacturing space. So today we're going to start unpacking a report that we like to look at annually. It's put out by our friends at Rockwell called The State of Smart Manufacturing. So Rockwell puts this out, and really it's a survey of manufacturers across the world, and they bring in a ton of relevant, I should say, and very insightful information about emerging technologies in the manufacturing space. So today, Brett and I are going to be talking about what are some of the obstacles, what are some of the headwinds that are trying to be addressed through technology. We will have a follow-on podcast, a two-part. Today, Brett and I will be looking at what are the things that all of these respondents, these are leaders of manufacturing companies across the company from large to small, what are they seeing as their biggest risks, their biggest obstacles? And the very first one, the top of mind for the second year running, was inflation.
Yep.
So why should that be a big concern?
Yeah, it's, in this space that inflation, you think about it when you go to the grocery store and you think about it, how it affects us as individuals, especially, younger families, I always think of, type of thing. But broader on a macro scale, like you said, these executives, these are large companies. I can't remember what the number was, but it was, many of them were billion-dollar,
absolutely,
companies. And so they're looking, the most recent, depending on when you're watching this, we're recording this in whatever today is.
Early April.
Yeah,
we just got the third quarter, or actually March, into first quarter numbers.
Yeah, so even an update on that, which wasn't positive. So the reality is from a manufacturing standpoint, it affects a lot of things. It affects, their cost, their energy costs, their product, but also on the back end of it affects, the supply, the demand, because if people can't, depend on what you're making, if people can't buy as much of it, then it's going to slow you down there. So inflation, on a broad sense, has a large impact, and we'll talk a little bit about some things then what they do to try to counter that, which kind of fits into this. But maybe give a little bit of the
the impacts are really broad, and I was just thinking a lot of big capital projects that these companies are waiting to do to bring in new technology. A lot of that is financed, and everybody was hoping for the Fed to reduce interest rates, the cost of money.
Yep.
And as these inflationary numbers continue to stay at really the highest numbers we've seen in quite a long time, we want to be around 2.5%. We're up around twice that.
Yeah,
it's not where we need to be, or close to twice that. So the cost of borrowing money, which means people, one of the impacts when you have inflationary pressures, you're less likely to invest. You're going to try to repair, keep your equipment running, keep it up instead of buying that new capability. And so that's definitely one of the obstacles. Your utility costs are higher, your equipment costs are higher, transportation, a lot of companies that have to ship this stuff, your transportation costs are higher. All these things then, companies pass that on to their consumers, and consumers vote by, I'm not going to buy as much of your stuff. Yep. So it's really a vicious cycle.
No, it has a lot of impact, and you bring up a good point in that it slows down spending, and so slows down, that investment potentially. Right now we're in this manufacturing boom of new manufacturing facilities. Same thing there. I don't know what the impact of some of that expansion will be, just because the cost of money is just higher. And so it's a variety. It has a big impact. It's obviously why it ended up for the second year in a row as the number one thing on the list. And so, they end up having to look, as you said, Tim, maybe a repair versus a replace or this or that. We got to get a little more life out of that, which puts more, so they're looking to drive more efficiency into the plant, which then kind of leads to some of the other types of things that we're going to talk about when you talk about your skilled workforce and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It all kind of connects a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of right now we know in the manufacturing space, particularly the area we're concerned about is skilled trades. Traditionally, one of the ways that companies address higher costs due to inflation is reducing staff or freezing pay rates or training or, we're going to cut costs. The problem with that is these guys, you're at the same time, we're encouraging you need to train, you need to upskill, you need to increase wages for these guys. And so they're caught really in a pickle right now. And they're looking for ways to, how do we bring on technology and gain efficiency when we have all these economic headwinds? So everybody out there is feeling the inflationary pressures. Anybody that goes out from gas to a carton of eggs. I mean, everybody's feeling it, and it's having a big impact. Again, for the second year in a row, the number one obstacle to the manufacturing space in the realm of technology, which is kind of interesting, is inflation. So that's number one. So the second thing they said was, and this is the first time this topic came up in the top 5, the topic is cybersecurity as it relates to manufacturing. We just had a couple of expert guests on in a previous podcast. We'll link it here. And Brett, I remember a couple of years ago, we went to a Rockwell show, and they started talking about cybersecurity there, and everybody was flocking to this demonstration and talk. And I was like, what is this? Is this like a defense industry symposium? But it was. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting now that 71%, almost 3/4 of all ransomware attacks are on industrial organizations focused on manufacturing. 3/4. Yeah, big target.
No, it has become a big target. It's the backsided weakness, I guess, of this smart manufacturing, in that you've connected your system. Everything we're used to, everything was very manual.
Standalone.
Yeah, we were lucky if we had internet. And so now with the Internet of Things and all the stuff that we've talked about in other podcasts, if somebody can get into your system, well, obviously, the hackers who have figured out, they can make a lot of money in the modern day hostage form, by basically shutting a plant down. It's one thing to steal data. They've been doing that for a long time too, but they've figured out, if I can get inside of your system and close your plant down, you'll pay me to get the lights back on.
Yeah, I really encourage you to watch the podcast. One of our experts here, they get in all of your networks and systems, and then they go basically undercover. They sleep, and they learn how your system works, how often you back it up. And then every time you back it up, they put these devices in place or algorithms in place to be able to all of your backups. So you can go, they can sleep for 3, 4, 6 months, and all of your backups, you think you're safe, but they've actually infiltrated all those. So when you try to recover, they hold all your data. It's amazing. So to mitigate this, a lot of companies now are trying to bring in experts. And I think we read in that report that the number one skill set they're looking for.
Yeah, that was one of the things I thought I was an interesting at Skillwork. We're out there looking for, highly talented, skilled tradesmen, with a variety of different talents. And we've definitely seen a big uptick in the last couple of years of companies looking for individuals with higher levels of automation. But I thought it was really interesting too, that in this report from these, executives that they're interviewing, that the number one skill set that they're looking for in their skilled talent is individuals with cybersecurity.
That's something.
Talent or understanding at least.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, nobody was talking about Internet of Things. A year ago, 2 years ago, they really weren't talking about cybersecurity. Today, this report that Rockwell just put out, it's top 5 concerns and the top thing they're looking for to hire. So this is a big deal, an emerging issue. Yeah. It just as an example, I was talking to you, Brett, about this before, and you can Google, look at examples of ransomware in manufacturing. It's pages. But an example, think about these as criminal gangs. And there's a gang called Ransomware Gang. They actually were able to exfiltrate over 27 terabytes of data from a company. Many of you know Johnson Controls, pretty big company, international company. They demanded initially a ransom of $51 million for them to unlock their data to them. And then we don't know exactly how much they ended up paying, but we do know that the cost for them to go in and clean up the mess and remediate cost Johnson Controls $27 million. So it's a big deal. It can cost you a ton.
Huge. No, it's a big deal that, like I said, I don't know what there's some folks that are smart and are making a lot of money to protect, find a way to protect companies. And it's, in our small company, I resisted for a couple years, just buying cybersecurity insurance.
We got to do it.
You got to do it. You can't afford not to.
Well, you'll have to watch the podcast too, Brett, because Tony said just buying cybersecurity insurance, and he gave me a few tips that I'm like, we got to talk about that because there's some things that you have to put in place in addition to that.
Is the skilled labor shortage hurting your company's bottom line? Skillwork is the premier staffing agency focusing exclusively on skilled labor. Our team of highly skilled workers augments your existing teams for elevated impact and decreased downtime. Partnering with hundreds of facilities in more than 30 states, we deploy our traveling industrial technicians to work for you on a contract basis. Our philosophy is simple: to honor God in all we do, bring respect back to the skilled trades, and positively impact those around us. For more information on how Skillwork can deliver the top labor talent you need, visit skillwork.com or call us at 402-447-7058. Call us today to see how Skillwork can work for you.
So the next headwind or obstacle that manufacturers face out of this report, no surprise, workforce issues contributing to multiple obstacles to growth. Some are internal, some are external. Some of the external workforces, in other words, a threat, things that you can't control but you have to respond to, is skilled worker shortage. And we talk about this all the time, Brett. So to be Captain Obvious again, but to foot stomp, there's a skilled worker shortage out there.
Yeah, it's sad, but we're glad. And so consider what our business is. I mean, this has been for almost as long as I can remember, even when I was in the manufacturing space, trying to find the skilled talent, the maintenance technicians, whatever, terminology we want to use has been an issue, and it just continues to grow. I mean, we've said it, probably 100 times on these podcasts that it's not just a today problem, when you've got, literally millions of shortages of skilled trades, people, but it's a number that continues to grow. They're still expecting it, to grow by another million. And so it's not, while there's a lot more attention on it, a lot more focus on it, just the sheer numbers of the challenges of the need versus what's available and the people leaving, the math is just against it.
Yeah, to just put it like if our great leaders in Washington decided to cut our budget by 2% this year, okay, awesome, but we're so far in debt.
Yeah.
The problem's still going to be there. So workforce issues, skilled labor shortage, that's not a problem. There is some good news. The number of students in vocational community colleges and going into trades rose by 16% year over year. So that's an amazing trend in the right direction. So people are paying attention to this. There's, more people are waking up to higher education may not be. So there's some lights and some cracks and some positive things that are coming, but
it's as we often say, we didn't create this mess overnight on the shortage of not emphasizing the need for these types of skills and trades and so forth. And we're not going to fix it overnight, but there is some hope. It's coming a little bit at the cost of the 4-year universities, but overall their enrollment is down pretty significantly, which kind of has to happen if you're going to balance this out. They're going to have to adjust, to the new reality, and then also you're definitely hearing it at the local school level, a lot more conversation about providing those types of opportunities.
Yep. and can kind of feel the culture kind of shifting, beginning to shift a little bit. People are becoming aware that it's a great opportunity, and that's an external, obstacle. It's like you just have to try to mitigate that. You can't control that necessarily. Some internal things that this report talked about with respect to workforce, though, things you can do something about. And there are two topics that they mentioned in this report. One is upskilling your employees, upskilling people, or repurposing, retraining them to a different role. And the other topic is change management. So those are two things. As a matter of fact, again, we just did a podcast with a guest of ours, a partner, Andy Camp from ES&E. We talked about upskilling. We'll link it here. We encourage you to go look at that, dive in depth in this topic. but the idea of upskilling and change management.
They go a little bit, all of these kind of connect a little bit to each other, but the upskilling it's more than just training, it's kind of thing. I mean, there's always been a lot of people training, but I think the need to upskill your talent. I think this report that we're referring to indicated, and I think this is probably an external, weakness, but the skilled workforce actually is still number one in that group as a competitive disadvantage that CEOs and executives are saying we're not going to be. They are concerned, maybe a little fearful of losing to their competition because they can't find this talent. Well, one way to solve that, or one way to at least feel like you're doing something, is upskilling. Either having a pipeline for upskilling obviously your own talent internally. Andy talked about you got to break your mindset that only certain people fit into the upskilling, that maybe it's a little too narrow, that you got to be more, who has the aptitude, who's willing to embrace these changes. And these changes, we're talking about like smart manufacturing and the things that are happening. And that's where the change management, all of a sudden now I think I read something, it's probably in this report, it's a really high percentage of the number of people who are now carrying in the manufacturing floor some type of a device, some type of a technology device. All of that is new to that environment. So, we've been going through some change management courses and stuff in our own company because as leaders look at it and we see down the road of how this is going to benefit the company, all the people in your company immediately go to how's it going to affect me?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where
it's a big deal. I mean, you can bring in a technology, a process, a tool, an approach, and it all makes sense, absolutely. But if the people aren't brought along, it's called in technology world user acceptance. And that sounds kind of antiseptic. But if you think about it, your people, if they don't embrace and understand the why, and you don't bring them along, it doesn't matter if you have the greatest technology, the greatest solution in the world, the greatest org structure. If people don't understand it, embrace it, and feel like they're part of it, then you can upskill all the people you want. But if they don't feel it, I mean, and to those of us who run businesses and look at numbers, it's like, what do you mean? Yep. You've got to bring people along, and it's a huge deal. So change management is one of the things that the report recognizes. Companies are investing heavily in understanding the science of change management and the necessity to upskill your workforce. So those are really two big, huge things that you can do, you can actually take advantage of. So again, we're going to take another swing at this. We're going to bring a guest on, Jake, who's going to talk more. He's a Rockwell distributor, Rockwell partner. He understands the technology. He's going to help us unpack what are some of the technological changes that are happening. Brett and I wanted to share today, these are some things that are happening that companies are trying to do to mitigate, but if you don't embrace them, well, it just produce further headwinds from your adoption of some of this stuff. So we talked about inflation, cybersecurity, the skills gap, labor shortage, change management, and upskilling. Any other thoughts on any of those from the report, Brett, that kind of sticks out in your mind?
When we have guests on, we learn things. I'm excited to hear from Jake as we get into the emerging. But these are the things they're trying to address. The goal isn't just to get stuck in these things, but what's emerging? What can we do to kind of address some of these issues and type of thing? But I mean, these are the realities. This is what everybody's kind of dealing with. I think everything from the inflation, which is a very external, for sure. I mean, it's an external. Most of us, there's not a lot we're going to do in the balance of our day to change the inflation rates. And so that's one we just have to, how do we deal with that in reality? Some of these, probably really the rest of them outside of inflation, there are actions we can take to mitigate how inflation is affecting our manufacturing facility. But the rest of these, they're, upskilling and am I doing everything? Am I thinking about everything I can do to find the talent that I need to run my manufacturing well? I'm talking with my people and so forth.
Cybersecurity posture.
Yes, all of those. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and and the fact that the first thing we led with was inflation. In a lot of companies, what do you do to deal with inflation? Well, you cut costs. You cut out things you think are not necessary for the lifeblood of your organization. The challenge, though, is a lot of these things we're talking about, in the years past, these were considered ancillary, but they're not. What we're saying today is you cannot cut off your nose to spite your face, as the old saying goes. You have to be looking at upskilling your cybersecurity posture, even in the face of inflation, because at the end of the day, the net effect of not paying attention to those is going to have a far greater impact than a higher inflation rate that we're currently dealing with today.
I've had a couple of conversations or in the last, but these types of situations and the inflation and so forth, especially the inflation, this is when it really, as we say, this is when the CEO gets paid for what he does, because now he's got to make the tough choices, and then because every accountant that he has is saying we have to cut costs. And
shareholders,
more shareholders than the other. We've got to slack, and we've seen it. We've just recently had a couple of conversations with companies. They're just and I don't want to sound unfair to the big boardroom, but sometimes there can be a little bit of a disconnect of what's happening on the manufacturing floor here. Just, we don't care what you got to do, but we got to cut X, and you figure it out.
I need those numbers this quarter.
Yep, and where you cut that, because I was just having a conversation with somebody in a company that kind of made this kind of a decision, and in 12 months. Their PMs are going to be behind. Their lines aren't going to, because it's like, cut the maintenance budget now. And now they're going to pay for it at some point. So you got to watch where you're cutting.
Yeah, some of these things are tactical, but they're really tactical that lead to strategic impact.
Yeah.
And so, and you guys, like us, you get down, head down day to day, you're thinking about things. These are things, this report, and we want to shout out Rockwell, who does this report. We're grateful to get it. It's insightful. We encourage you to take a look at it. You can get it out there. If you have a Rockwell distributor partner, they can point you to it. We'd be happy to share it with you here from Skillwork. If you want to reach out to us, we want to thank you for giving us your time and attention to join us here on the Skillwork Forum today. We hope that this conversation, this discussion had a positive impact on you today and added some value to you and your company. And remember, we at Skillwork, we exist to provide amazing, outstanding skill workers to companies just like yours that need them. So if you find yourself in need of some of the workers that have this sort of skill, please reach out to us. Visit us online at skillwork.com or give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. And one more thing, if you enjoyed this conversation today, as much as we did, we could talk about this up all day. Don't miss out on future episodes we have, or even look at past episodes. Head on over to Spotify or YouTube, wherever you're listening to this today, and subscribe the show. Hit that like button. Let us know what you think. Give us your feedback so we can continue to bring you great content. So until next time, thank you for joining us on the Skillwork Forum. God bless.
This is Brett Elliott, CEO and co-founder at Skillwork. Prior to starting Skillwork, I spent over 30 years in the food manufacturing space. From literally starting out cleaning the restrooms to becoming the maintenance manager, then the plant manager, to eventually becoming the president and owner, I've seen the manufacturing world from many perspectives. And like many of you, I've seen firsthand the growing need for higher skilled workers, while at the same time experiencing the shortage of this skilled talent. I started Skillwork to address that need. I knew the headhunter and the local temp agency models were not the solution. If you're experiencing the same shortage of talent at your facility, we would love to connect you with our team. Give us a call at 402-447-7058 or visit us online at skillwork.com.